The room felt like it was holding its breath. Every surface, every shadow, every second of silence that stretched between Min-jae and the man standing across from him felt loaded, the way the air feels right before lightning splits the sky open. Amara stood between them, shaken but upright. Her eyes moved between the two men like she was trying to calculate something that didn't have a clean answer. "You shouldn't have come," she said again, quieter this time. Min-jae finally looked at her. Just for a moment. Just long enough to say everything that words couldn't carry in a room full of enemies. "I know. I came anyway." Then his eyes returned to the man. "We haven't been introduced," Min-jae said. His voice was even, almost conversational. The kind of calm that didn't come from comfort, it came from discipline. The man tilted his head slightly, amused. "You know who I am." "I know what you control," Min-jae replied. "That's not the same thing." A flicker of something moved across the man's face. Not quite irritation. More like surprise, the kind a chess player feels when a piece they underestimated suddenly threatens the king. "They said you were calculating," the man said slowly. "They didn't say you were this calm. People who study fear forget that some men move past it." The man clasped his hands behind his back and began walking, not toward Min-jae, but in a slow arc around the room. Like he owned the space. Like he had rehearsed this. "You've dismantled 3 layers of our infrastructure in 72 hours, he said. "Frozen accounts. Alerted authorities. Exposed a man we spent 11 years cultivating inside the financial sector." Min-jae said nothing. "Most people," the man continued, "would call that impressive. And you?" The man stopped walking. "I call it reckless," he said. "Because you don't yet understand what you've woken up." The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was filled with weight, with implication, with the quiet hum of something enormous shifting beneath the surface. If you've been following this story from the beginning, you already know that nothing in this world is what it seems. Drop a comment right now and tell me, did you expect this moment to arrive so fast? Min-jae let the silence sit for exactly 3 seconds. Then he spoke. "You took someone I protect," he said. "You used her to send me a message. And when that didn't stop me, you sent a video designed to break me emotionally." He paused. "Every move you've made in the last 4 days has been reactive. You've been responding to me." The man's jaw tightened barely. But Min-jae caught it. "That's not power," Min-jae said. "That's panic wearing a suit." Something shifted in the room. 2 of the men positioned near the walls moved slightly, not enough to be called a step, but enough to signal readiness. Enough to remind Min-jae that he was standing in someone else's controlled space. He didn't flinch. "You came alone," the man said. "Did I?" The man's eyes narrowed. And at that exact moment, Min-jae's phone buzzed once in his pocket. He didn't reach for it. He didn't need to. Because across the city, something was already happening. His team had been moving the moment he walked through the door. This wasn't a rescue mission. It was a detonator. Min-jae had walked into this building not to negotiate and not to fight his way out. He had walked in because he needed the man's attention fully in this room and away from what was happening everywhere else. "You want to know the difference between us?" Min-jae said. The man said nothing. But he was listening. "You built a network by making people afraid," Min-jae said. "I built mine by making people loyal." He took one slow step forward. "Fear breaks under pressure," he continued. "Loyalty holds." The man studied him. Then he did something Min-jae didn't expect. He laughed. Not cruelly. Not dismissively. Genuinely. "You're remarkable," the man said. "Truly. If things were different." "They're not," Min-jae said. The man nodded slowly. Then his expression closed. Like a door being shut firmly. "Last chance," the man said. "Walk away. Take her. Disappear. And I'll let you live with what you've built." Min-jae tilted his head. "And the network?" "Continues." "And the people you've destroyed to run it?" Silence. "That's what I thought," Min-jae said quietly. If you're still reading this, hit the like button right now because what Min-jae does next is the moment this entire story has been building toward. What happened next took 11 seconds. Min-jae knew because he counted. At the first second, his phone buzzed again. At the third, the lights in the building flickered. At the fifth, one of the men by the wall reached for his earpiece, his face shifting from composed to confused. At the seventh, the man across from Min-jae turned his head slightly, distracted. At the ninth, Amara, who had been watching Min-jae the entire time with those sharp, calculating eyes, took a careful step sideways, away from the man holding her arm. At the 11th second, Min-jae spoke. "It's already done," he said. The man turned back to him sharply. "What did you do?" "What you never expected," Min-jae replied. "I gave everything to the right people." He reached slowly into his jacket, no sudden movements, hands visible, and withdrew a single folded document. He set it on the table beside him without breaking eye contact. "That's a copy," he said. "The originals are already filed. Sent to 4 separate regulatory bodies, 2 investigative journalists, and a federal contact who has been waiting a very long time for exactly this kind of evidence." The man stared at the document. His composure didn't shatter. Men like him didn't shatter. But it cracked right down the center in a way that changed his face entirely. "You couldn't have. Your communication hub," Min-jae said. "The one your people thought was sealed. My team was in it for 6 hours before tonight." Another second of silence. Then the man by the wall spoke into his earpiece. Fast. Low. Urgent. And the answer he received made his face go pale. Min-jae watched it happen. "The accounts are already frozen," Min-jae said. "The transfers flagged. The men you sent to my offices tonight were met by people who were expecting them." He straightened his jacket calmly. "You planned for every version of me except this one," he said. "The version that was never coming to fight." "Then why come here at all?" the man asked. Min-jae looked at Amara. "Because she matters," he said. "And I wanted you to know that I didn't choose between her and the mission." He paused. "I built a plan where I didn't have to." The room held still for a long and brittle moment. Amara's eyes glistened. Not from fear anymore. From something harder to name, the way someone looks when they realize the person in front of them is more than they understood. Subscribe right now if you haven't already, because this is the kind of story that only gets more intense from here. You don't want to miss what's coming in part 7. The man was quiet for what felt like a very long time. When he finally spoke, his voice had lost something. It wasn't volume. It wasn't composure exactly. It was certainty. "You understand," he said slowly, "that this doesn't end with one filing. One arrest. One frozen account." "I know," Min-jae replied. "There are people above me." "I know that too." "Then you know this isn't over." Min-jae met his eyes without hesitation. "It's not," he said. "But this chapter is." He walked to Amara. Steady. Unhurried. Like a man crossing a room in his own home. The guard beside her didn't move. Not because he couldn't, but because something had shifted in the room in a way that made everyone recalibrate. Min-jae stopped beside her. "Let's go," he said quietly. She looked at him with an expression that held too much for a single moment, relief and guilt, and something that had been building since the very beginning of all of this. "You shouldn't have risked this," she whispered. "I didn't risk it," he said. "I planned it." She almost smiled. Almost. They walked toward the door together. And the man, still standing where Min-jae had left him, still holding himself together with the discipline of someone who had never been cornered before, spoke one last time. "Kong Min-jae." Min-jae stopped, but didn't turn. "You've started something," the man said. "The people above me won't wait. They won't negotiate. They will come for everything." A pause. "Are you prepared for that?" The room held absolutely still. And then Min-jae turned, just his head, just enough to be seen over his shoulder, and his voice came out low and final as a door being sealed shut. "I've been prepared," he said, "since the moment you made this personal." And then he walked out. The night air met them like a release of pressure, cool and open after the sealed tension of that building. Amara exhaled slowly beside him. Neither of them spoke for a long moment. They reached his car. He opened the door for her. She got in. He walked around. He sat. He started the engine. And then, just sitting there in the dark with the city glowing around them, Amara turned to him. "I owe you an explanation," she said. "You do," he replied. "A full one. Everything I didn't tell you at the beginning." "Yes." She looked at her hands. "I was part of that network," she said quietly. "A long time ago. Before I understood what it was. Before I understood what they were building. Min-jae didn't respond immediately. He let the words settle. Let her have the space of the silence without filling it with something rushed. I got out, she continued. Or I thought I did. But they don't really let you out. They just wait. And when you became someone they wanted to use as leverage, they came back for me. She finally looked at him. I should have told you, she said. From the beginning. I thought keeping you away from it was protecting you. It almost got you killed, he said. I know. Another silence. Longer. The kind that only exists between two people who are figuring out whether what they have is strong enough to hold the truth. Is there more? He asked. She hesitated. And in that hesitation, in the way her breath shifted and her eyes moved slightly before coming back to his, Min-jae understood that the answer was yes. That whatever she was about to say next wasn't going to make anything easier. It was going to make everything more complicated. She opened her mouth. And that was when his phone rang. The investigator. He answered immediately. We have a problem, the man said. Min-jae's eyes stayed on Amara. What kind? The man you just walked away from, the investigator said slowly. He wasn't the top of the network. I know, Min-jae said. But the person above him, the investigator said. We just found out who it is. Silence. Min-jae, the investigator continued, his voice dropping lower. It's someone you know. The air in the car changed. Amara watched Min-jae's face. And for the first time since this entire war began, for the first time in days of calculated pressure and unshakable composure, something flickered behind his eyes. Something that looked almost like disbelief. Say the name, he said. The investigator said it. And Min-jae went very, very still. If you made it to the end of part 6, I need you to comment right now, because that name changes everything. Who do you think it is? Someone close to Min-jae? Someone we've already seen? Make your predictions below, like this post, subscribe if you haven't, and share it because part 7 is going to break the internet. The truth behind the network, the truth behind Amara, and the truth about the name on that phone call. It's all coming. Min-jae didn't move. Didn't breathe. Didn't blink. The phone was still pressed to his ear, but the investigator had gone quiet on the other end. The way people go quiet when they've just said something that can't be unsaid, and they're waiting to see what it does to the person who received it. Amara was watching him. She had been watching him since the moment he answered the call. And whatever she saw happening behind his eyes right now, that slow, terrible shift, made her go still in a way that had nothing to do with fear of the network. This was a different kind of fear. The kind that comes from watching someone you care about receive a wound you didn't expect to cause. Say it again, Min-jae said finally. The investigator said the name again. Slower this time. Like he understood it needed to land properly. Min-jae closed his eyes. Just for a second. Just long enough for the name to move through him completely, not as information, not as data, not as a variable in a strategy, but as a human thing. A real thing. The kind that reaches past every wall a man builds around himself and finds the part he forgot to protect. Then he opened his eyes. And they were cold again. Completely. Where is he now? Min-jae asked. That's the problem, the investigator said. He's already moving. The moment the network got word that you walked out of that building tonight, someone made a call. We traced it. The call went directly to him. He knows I know. Yes. Min-jae's jaw tightened. Then he's not running, he said. No, the investigator replied. He's not. A pause. Min-jae, he's coming to you. The line went quiet for a moment. Then Min-jae said 2 words. Good. Let him. He ended the call. The car was silent. Amara hadn't looked away from him once. Who is it? She asked. Min-jae stared through the windshield at the dark road ahead. Ji-hoon, he said. The name landed between them like something dropped from a great height. Amara's face changed. Not with confusion. With recognition. And that recognition, that immediate, unmistakable recognition, told Min-jae everything he needed to know about how long this had actually been in motion. You knew, he said. It wasn't an accusation. It was barely even a question. It was just the truth arriving at its own pace, the way truth always does, slow and then all at once. I didn't know it was him specifically, Amara said. Her voice was careful. Not defensive. Careful, the way someone speaks when they're trying to be precise, because precision is the only thing left they can offer. I knew there was someone above the network. Someone who had been involved from the very beginning. Someone whose name never appeared in any document, any file, any communication. She exhaled. I suspected. But I couldn't confirm it. And I was afraid that if I told you what I suspected without proof, I would have gone after him immediately, Min-jae said. Yes. And you thought that would get me killed. I thought it would get us both killed. The silence that followed was not empty. It was full, overfull, with everything that had been withheld and everything that had just been released, and the complicated space between two people who had both been trying to protect each other and had both, in doing so, made everything harder. Min-jae turned to look at her. His eyes moved across her face slowly, not with anger, not with coldness, but with something more exhausting than either of those things. Understanding. Tell me everything, he said. From the beginning. Not the version you thought I could handle. The real one. Amara held his gaze. Then she nodded. And she began. If you've been waiting for this moment, the full truth, finally, then you've been reading this story the right way. Like this post right now and keep reading, because what Amara is about to say is going to reframe everything you thought you understood. She had been 24 years old when she first met the network. Not as an enemy. Not even as a recruit. As a resource. She had been working as a financial analyst at a mid-tier investment firm, brilliant, ambitious, and largely invisible in the way that young women in male-dominated rooms often are. She had spotted an anomaly in a series of cross-border transactions that her supervisors had waved away as routine. She hadn't waved it away. She had followed it. And it had led her somewhere she was never supposed to find. A man had approached her 3 days later. Polished. Calm. The kind of man who seemed completely ordinary until you looked at him long enough to notice that he never quite looked back at you the same way twice, always calculating, always measuring. He had told her she was talented. He had told her the firm she worked for was connected to something larger. He had told her that the people who ran that something larger valued discretion and intelligence above everything else. And then he had made her an offer. She was young. She was underpaid. She was watching people around her advance not because of capability, but because of access she didn't have. She said yes. For 8 months, she moved money. Not violently. Not obviously. Small restructurings. Quiet redirections. The kind of financial maneuvering that looked legal from every angle unless you knew exactly what pattern to look for. She knew the pattern. She was the one building it. And then one day she pulled a thread she wasn't supposed to pull, the way she always did, the way she couldn't seem to stop herself from doing, and what unraveled on the other end of that thread was not a financial irregularity. It was a name. A list of names. People who had been financially destroyed. Companies that had been deliberately collapsed. Livelihoods erased not as collateral damage, but as deliberate strategy, as messages sent to people who had refused to cooperate or had gotten too close to the truth. She had sat with that list for 3 days. And then she had disappeared. Changed cities. Changed her name briefly. Built distance between herself and everything she had touched. She thought she had gotten out cleanly. She had been wrong. They had watched her the entire time. Not to punish her. Not immediately. To wait. Because the network was patient in ways that most people couldn't comprehend. It didn't need to act quickly. It had time. It had reach. It could afford to let someone walk away and simply keep a thread attached invisible, undetectable, and pull it whenever it became useful. The thread they pulled was Min-jae. When she had built a life. When she had built something real. When she had allowed herself to believe that the past was sealed behind her. They had come back and told her, very calmly, that if she didn't cooperate, the man she loved would be dismantled, not physically, not dramatically, but systematically, quietly, the way they dismantled everything. His companies. His reputation. His freedom. She had tried to find a way around it. She had tried to protect him from the outside without pulling him in. And she had failed. And now here they were. Min-jae listened to all of it without interrupting once. When she finished, the car was so quiet that the distant sound of the city felt intrusive. Ji-hoon, he said finally. Yes, she replied. He was the one who connected you to the network originally? Amara's eyes didn't waver. He was the one who sent the man to approach me, she said. I didn't know it at the time. I only confirmed it recently. He's been at the center of this from the very beginning. Min-jae absorbed that. Ji-hoon, his oldest business ally. The man who had been present at the founding of his first company. The man who had sat across from him at 100 negotiating tables, had celebrated victories with him, had been the first call Min-jae made when deals went wrong, and he needed someone who understood the architecture of what he had built. A man he had trusted completely. For over a decade. He didn't just join the network, Min-jae said slowly. No, Amara said. He built it. Silence. Or at least, she said carefully, he built the part that was designed to get close to you. And there it was. The thing beneath the thing. This had never been about the network's general expansion or its broader agenda. Min-jae had been the target from the beginning. His companies. His influence. His financial reach. His access to government relationships and international markets that the network had been trying to penetrate for years without success. They hadn't tried to attack him. They had tried to absorb him. And when that proved impossible, because Min-jae was not a man who could be absorbed quietly, they had shifted to destruction. But even that had failed. Because Min-jae was also not a man who could be destroyed quietly. Drop everything and comment right now. Did you see Ji-hoon coming? Because the story just completely changed. Share this with someone who needs to read it from part 1. His phone buzzed. Not the investigator this time. A message. Unknown number. One line. I think it's time we spoke properly. Come alone. You know where? Min-jae stared at the message. Then, for the first time in a very long time, something shifted at the corner of his mouth that wasn't quite a smile and wasn't quite grief. It was the expression of a man who had spent days moving through a maze and had just realized the exit had been in front of him the entire time. He wants to meet, Min-jae said. Amara read the message over his shoulder. You can't, she said immediately. I have to. Min-jae. He's not going to run, Min-jae said. Men like Ji-hoon don't run. They consolidate. Right now he's calling in every favor, activating every backup layer, trying to rebuild the walls I've been tearing down. He paused. If I don't end this tonight, he'll have rebuilt enough by morning to make it 10 times harder. Amara grabbed his arm. He's not just powerful, she said. He's been planning for you specifically. He knows how you think. He knows how you move. He built the network around your patterns. I know, Min-jae said. Then you know walking into a meeting he arranged is the only move left, Min-jae said. He turned to look at her fully. And something in his expression made her stop. Not because it was cold. Because it wasn't. For a moment, just a moment, the armor was completely gone. And what was underneath it was not the billionaire, not the strategist, not the man who had dismantled 3 layers of a criminal network in 72 hours. It was just him. I need you to trust me one more time, he said quietly. Amara looked at him for a long moment. I've always trusted you, she said. I just didn't trust myself to be honest with you. Then be honest now, he said. Is there anything else I need to know before I walk into that room? She hesitated. And in that hesitation, Min-jae felt the shape of something he hadn't fully accounted for. Amara. She closed her eyes briefly. Ji-hoon doesn't just know how you think, she said. He knows because I told him. Not recently. Years ago. Before I understood what he was. She opened her eyes. When I thought he was just a mutual contact. When he asked me questions about you that I thought were innocent. The weight of that settled over the car like weather. How much? Min-jae asked. Enough, she said. Enough that he built a strategy specifically around the version of you that I described. Min-jae was quiet. But, she said, and her voice steadied, that version of you is from years ago. Before everything you've become. Before everything you've built. She met his eyes. He built his plan around a man who no longer fully exists. Min-jae held her gaze. Then he nodded once. Then he's already behind, he said. He started the car. Where are you going? She asked. To finish this. Min-jae. Lock the doors after I get out, he said. The investigator is 2 minutes from this location. He'll stay with you. You can't keep doing this alone. I'm not alone, he said. He picked up his phone and made a single call. It rang once. "It's time," he said when the other end picked up. "Execute everything." He hung up. Amara stared at him. "What did you just start?" she asked. Min-jae stepped out of the car. He leaned back in through the open door, one hand on the roof, eyes steady, voice quieter than anything he'd said all night. "The end," he said simply. And then he straightened and walked into the dark. Behind him, the city began to light up, not with dawn, which was still hours away, but with the glow of screens in office buildings, the flash of emergency response vehicles in 3 separate districts, the sudden activity of institutions that had been waiting for exactly the signal that had just been sent. The network had one night to survive, and Min-jae had spent the last 72 hours making sure it wouldn't. Now the only question that remained: was Ji-hoon going to face what was coming? Or was he going to try one last move? And if he did, what card had he been holding back this entire time? The one no one knew about. The one even Amara didn't know to warn Min-jae about. The one that was already in motion. If you made it to the end of this part 6, you already know this is no longer just a power struggle. This is personal. This is surgical. And it is far from over. Comment your predictions right now. What is Ji-hoon's final card? What happens when Min-jae walks into that room? Like this, share it, and subscribe, because part 7 is where everything detonates. The confrontation. The confession. The card nobody saw coming. It's all arriving. Be ready. Part 7 coming soon.